I'm Mr. Wahlberg, and I'm glad you're here. I forgot to record the Zoom call that we did with the other coaches, so now I'm going to recreate it here in my basement. And here we go. We have a couple of goals that we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is try to get a little refresher on what public forum is. We discussed this in our last coaches clinic that we did over Zoom, but here I'm just kind of make sure they're on the same page with it. And then I'm going to talk about what the speeches do, kind of how the rounds of the speeches go. And then we're going to talk about the evidence, the stuff that we're providing, and how you're going to assemble evidence docs from it. So the first thing I want to do is talk about how public forum debate is a two-person team debating another two-person team. And if you have experience in policy debate, then this is going to seem pretty similar to it. But it's a two-on-two debate, which, if you policy debate, if you did high school debate, you probably did policy, at least if you grew up in Kansas. That's kind of what we say. Public forum is a little lower threshold of entry than policy does. It doesn't often speak as fast. Like it's not, a brute force. How many words per minute can we get into it? It's a little more logic. Also, it doesn't have a plan with it, so you're less likely to get structured disads. It's possibly topicality, but that's kind of a rarer thing in public forum. With public forum, it focuses more on the idea. Is this like a good idea or a bad idea? And it doesn't get a lot into the minutia, and so it has a lower threshold of entry. And a lot of people think it's a really fun form of debate, and I'm excited to teach it. In a public forum format, each debater speaks twice. Now, I've put a times format up on the Google Drive, and all of the coaches have access to the Google Drive. If you don't have it, reach out and I will send it to you happily to send it. But each person speaks twice, and there's two types of speeches. There's a first speech that's a constructive speech, and every kid gets a chance to go construct arguments. Those are 4 minutes long, and then they get a chance to do some answering, some summaries, and final focuses. Some of the speeches are totally scripted, and I'll talk about that in a second. Some of the speeches are sort of just like prepared in the moment, kind of assembled with what we've got to put things together there. There are some questioning periods. Questioning periods in public forum are known as crossfires, where both kids ask each other questions during the questioning time. It's not like a grilling cross-examination. I'm going to ask you all the questions. It's more, makes it more dialogue-y. I think it's really, really cool. But the heart of competitive debate is the evidence, and to compile the evidence, to organize it, to explain it, to use it in the speech, and what you're going to go take into the round with it. That's really what the driver of competitive debate is, the use of the evidence on it. So to that end, all the schools will get packets of briefs. They'll get some evidence, some cases that we've put together at St. James Academy, and then some from our prep companies that have shared some stuff with us. So there are debate prep companies that go and research and compile evidence for competitive debate services and then sell them as subscriptions. We're going to share some of that, and I'll talk there. Like I said, we're also providing a couple of pro and con cases. If you want to find additional evidence for it, absolutely go for it. You have my permission to go create as much evidence as you want, or go find evidence that's out there. I think we're probably giving you enough to work with for this tournament, but absolutely, it's a green light. If you want to go find some new stuff, you have my permission to. The world is your oyster. So, like we said, the debate speeches work by stringing together evidence, and it's typically in an outline format. There's a little very brief sentence or two introduction, and then to an outline format on it. Then, when we assemble arguments, we like to hear arguments in a claim evidence warrant, or claim warrant evidence, or whatever kind of format where people are using evidence to make a case and then explaining it out to warrant it as part of a bigger argument, a bigger claim that they're making. The first couple speeches of the round are totally pre-written. Everything else kind of adapts from them. And before we kind of get into like the business of the speeches, I also want to make it clear that while evidence is what we really like to see in debates, strictly speaking, to win a debate, you don't have to have evidence. What you got up in the old noodle, the logic also works there, and totally logical arguments are considered real arguments. If the logic works, the logic works. So. Let's talk about kind of the mechanics of debate, like what a round of debate looks like. And I've sent out some examples, some YouTube videos that you could share with your students. The internet is full of, rounds. I've sent you a couple of them on there. But I want to kind of talk about kind of what the expectations are. So you watch the round, you kind of know what's going on. The pro team at our tournament is going to speak first. And I'm going to say pro, you'll also hear me say affirmative. That is, they are affirming the resolution. They are pro, like in favor of the resolution. Public forum will use either term. Kind of debaters get used to saying aff and neg, affirmative or negative. Public forum debate could use either one. They're interchangeable terms. You can use whatever is natural to you. But the pro team speaks first. The team that is in favor of the resolution. Now, you'll also see that in public forum, that's not always the case in the rest of the world. In fact, it's not unusual at all to go and coin flip the round. And somebody says, I want to be the con team. But I want to speak. And the other side says, I want to speak second. So the first speech of the round becomes the negative speech. You will see that in other formats of public forum. And if you watch some online, that could happen. We're going to set who is the pro and con, and we're going to say the pro goes first, just to create a more simplified format. If there was a big middle school public forum circuit, then we would consider doing coin flipping. But as we're kind of introducing this with everybody's their first time on it, let us take away that part of the drama and just kind of simplify. So the pro team speaks first. And it is a totally scripted speech. It is 100% scripted. You're going to walk up there, you're going to have your paper, or you're going to read off your screen. Chromebooks work fine if your school has laptops. If you're an iPad school, it's a little tricky. If you are not a technology school, please talk to me and let me come up with a solution for you for this. But in general, like, you're going to read off your screen on it. And the first pro-constructive, the first affirmative constructive, is 100% scripted. It's a 4-minute speech, and every word is up there. And I'll say this to my debaters when they're learning the game. Like, somebody's got to speak first, and you got to be brave to be the one that speaks first. Now, the good news is that I'm going to totally script it out for you, and you don't have to make like any decisions in the moment. Like, all of it is put out there, and that's the trade-off. You got to be the first speaker, but every word is going to be up there. The later speakers get the luxury of not speaking first, but they got to do a little bit of the work of adapting what's in the round. And some kids love that. They like, well, I want to go, make the speech my own and go create it out, and that's fine. There's different things that fill the hearts of different kids, right? The con team speaks second, and the first con constructive, the first negative constructive, is, again, mostly a scripted speech. It could be 100% scripted. We suggest to be 75% scripted. Like, you get a 4-minute speech, have 3 minutes of it that you're totally scripting, and then 1 minute where you are, addressing something that the pro side said. But it could be 100% scripted as well. That's totally acceptable. There's not specifically a rule on it. After the first pro constructive and the first con constructive, there's a questioning period that's called crossfire. Crossfire. And actually, this style of debate was loosely modeled on the Sunday morning political talk show that used to exist. And actually, the earliest versions of public forum debate was called Ted Turner debate, because the guy that invented crossfire, whatever. So both debaters stand up and face the judge. And this is actually something that's really kind of hard for rookies to figure out, is because you have debater 1 and debater 2, and they will want to face each other because they're talking to each other. But actually, we would like them to turn and face the judge and stand shoulder to shoulder and face the judge. And I explained this to my debaters. Like, if you were on stage acting in a show, you face the audience, and you want all the words to go hit the audience. If you were in a courtroom and you are, addressing a witness, you're actually addressing the jury. You're actually addressing the judge, whoever the audience is there. Even though you're cross-examining the witness, you are speaking to the jury. Likewise, in a debate round, there are two people that are asking each other questions in a crossfire, but they're not facing each other. They're facing the judge, because that's the audience. That's who you're pointing at. Anyway, so both debaters stand up and face the audience, and in this part, they're going to ask each other questions. So there's a little social grace of living in a civil society. Say, would you like to ask the first question? Why, yes, I would. Thank you. Or, may I ask the first question? Why, yes, you may. Thank you. Something like that. Somebody's got to get started and get the first question. Kind of some little social grace in figuring out who's going to go first on there. So that's the first constructives. in the first crossfire. Then the second set of speeches go. And these are a little less scripted. The second pro or the second affirmative constructive and the second con or the second negative constructive, they're a little less scripted. And those might be 25 or 50% scripted. But what they really want to do is address what the first speaker said. They may continue to bring new arguments into the round. They could bring up an entirely new issue. Like somebody said that they wanted to ban plastics because plastics are economically wasteful. You go and produce a product and use it once and throw it away, and that's bad for the economy. That's what your first pro-constructive said. And the second pro-constructive could say, not only that, but they threaten wildlife. And, you know, they talk about that. Okay, people my age, like every time I see a 6-pack ring of plastic rings, I think of that turtle. And everybody that's my age remembers the turtle with the 6-pack ring that was caught around it and misshaped the shell. You find something like that. It's not really a visual aids kind of environment, but it's like, you know, the second pro speaker says, not only is it economically wasteful, it's bad for animals. You know, and those fine. You're constructing arguments. The first and the second can say unrelated things, but whatever. But then they can bring new ideas into the debate. They should try the second constructives for both the pro and the con should try to answer something from the opponent. 50%, 75% of their time is answering what the first person said onto it. Then crossfire number 2. Same thing. Those two kids go up and face the judge. They ask each other, may I ask the first question? Yes, you may. May I ask the second? So they kind of go back and forth onto it. May I ask the first question? Yes, you may. Wait. So that's kind of the ideas there. The third round of speeches is not pre-written. The third round of speeches is not pre-written. And these should directly address the opponent. So the third round of speeches are known as the summary speeches. And we are back to F1 and con and neg 1. So pro and con first speakers. Their second speech is really addresses what the other person has said. And here we like to see a lot of real good clash. Our opponent said so-and-so. We have 2 responses, blah, blah, blah. Our opponent said so-and-so. We have 3 responses. First, yada yada. Second, so and so. Third, blah blah blah. Like right, and they're answering there. These are much shorter speeches. They are 2 minutes long. I don't suggest reading a lot of evidence. If I was like little Joey Wahlberg, a 7th grader trying to go debate my first time, I would probably take a couple of pieces of evidence up to the front with me so I could read it in the summary section, but I would not get to it. That would be my backup plan if I only had I only have 60 seconds of stuff. Then I'm going to read 2 pieces of evidence. But it's not really a great moment for evidence unless it's really important. If somebody has misunderstood a piece of evidence in a round, you need to clarify it. Or if it's like the real zinger, like that's your silver dagger, right? And you're ready to go for it. The summary speeches are not usually a great time for evidence on it. Then is grand crossfire. Now here, all 4 debaters go stand up at the front, and there's not a rule on this, but we would like to see all 4 debaters ask a question. We would like to see all 4 debaters contribute to an answer. Now, I've often found that one debater kind of becomes like the dominant kid and it tries to answer all the questions, and the other kid's like just kind of lets them or not. We would like to hear from all 4. Again, there's not a rule on it. There's not like a specific all 4 debaters must ask a question, must answer a question. But we would like to see that this is a good cooperative thing, that everybody gets their voice heard on it. I'll also say that in public forum debates, this grand crossfire is kind of, if the wheels are going to come off, this is where they're going to come off. This is where people are going to lose their cool and get snippy. So I think it's good to kind of prep our debaters ahead of time. Like, listen, we are addressing the argument, not the person. We are addressing the claim, not the claimant, right? This debate is not personal, and it might feel personal, but it's not personal. We're going to the issue at hand. And remember that in crossfire, the questions that you're going to ask each other should be about the debate, not about the person. How would you dare say that? Like, that's a bad crossfire question. But can you please explain your point again? Because I'm not sure I understood. Or did you really mean to claim that, or was that misspeaking? Like, those are more ways to finesse that. Even those are kind of loaded questions. But if somebody's going to lose their cool, it's going to grand crossfire. The last speeches of the round are known as the final focus, which I just love. They're sometimes called the closer speech, or sometimes it's called the grand summaries. But final focus is kind of the thing, and they focus on all the reasons the judge should vote for your side, all the reasons the judge should vote pro resolution or con resolution, right? And they usually refocus on the arguments presented of their own side, rather than so much of what the opponent said, although you will see some of that. These are also real short speeches. We're doing them at 2 minutes. This is not, not all that in depth onto it, but they kind of focus on their own side rather than the opponent. And here, I always suggest to all of my teams that in the final focus speech, ask for the ballot. Just say, thank you. Please vote for this resolution. Please vote pro in this round, or please vote con and against the resolution. Whatever it be, ask for the ballot on it. Then two sides can look at each other's opponents like, hey, good round, nice job. Good luck today. Hope you had fun. This was fun. Something like that. And here I kind of explain, like, this is sort of video game etiquette. So if you're playing online and you go and at the end of the game, you do GG, right? Good game, and you tell everybody good game, and you do it just to be polite, just for because that's just the discourse of what it is to interact with other human beings. And likewise, after a debate round, you say, good round, nice job, that was fun. Even if it was not a particularly good round, that's just the nice thing that you acknowledge an opponent. Even if they just waxed you, or if you just obliterated them. And waxing and obliterating doesn't usually happen when people are still learning the game, but whatever, it's fine. But you still like, hey, good job. It's a social grace. Which is also one of the reasons we debate. Not only is it to go win rounds, it's also to just remind us that we are human beings interacting with other human beings. It's also fine at this point to address the judge. Judge, thank you for judging today. We appreciate it. Have a good day. And then you can leave the room. Go back and find your campsite. At a normal debate tournament, all of the teachers would be hanging out in the lunchroom during the rounds. And after the rounds, you would come down to the lunchroom, and you see your teacher, and you say, we faced a team that ran the Oceans case, or something like that. In this case, actually, so one of the quirks of being at St. James Academy is that we don't have a theater or auditorium yet. We're working on building one, but we don't have one yet. So our lunchroom becomes our theater, and they're setting up for the fall musical. So we actually won't get a lunchroom for our tournament. We'll set up some camps around in the hallways, and you say, okay, this is where St. Wenceslas Grade School is, and we're going to go gather. Come see me back here after your rounds, and we'll see what's going on. So yeah, back to the campsite, and then we'll kind of get a chance to jaw about it, like, oh, were you happy with your work? Did you stand up straight? Were you loud enough for the judge? And all those things that you tell, and then you kind of jaw for a couple of minutes, like, okay, well, let's get off to round two. Do you know where you're going? Oh yeah, I'm in room 1111. Like, okay, let's go find it. And get them off there. Go find your rooms. And that's kind of the rounds. We'll play 3 rounds. We're going to preset all of it. In debate world, there's sometimes what's known as power matching, where they start saying, like, well, you've won a round. You're going to go face another team that's won a round. So the 2 strongest teams go face each other. And that's awesome, and I love it. In this case, we're running a kind of, a 3-round tournament. It's kind of small, and everybody's learning the game, so we're just rando pairing all of it. We're not doing any power matching on it. Everybody's rando, and you're just going to get what you're going to get. Hey, I want to talk about evidence for a second. I want to get to the evidence. And we have pre-written 4 cases, 2 pro cases and 2 con cases. I'm going to talk about those. And then I want to talk about how you can find some additional evidence. You can even write your own cases if you want on it. And for here, I'm going to refer to the Google Drive that we've shared. I've shared a folder. And I apologize if you've been kind of clicking over this in the last week. I've been reorganizing and kind of renaming some stuff, and I know that's hard, but I think I'm kind of done reorganizing this file, so the dust has settled. If you've made a home in there, like, oh, I sure did love that file. It's still in there. It might have a new name. You'll find it. But anyway, I think I'm done remodeling on this file. But so we have 2 cases. There's something called a case con and a case pro 1 and 2. And I want to talk about case pro 1. Now, this is what the first affirmative would go read in their round. And there's a little bit there to go get started for the second affirmative, or the first pro and the second pro. But most of this is what the first pro would go read, and it's the totally scripted speech. Now, I'm also going to say that I have written all 4 of these and adapted them from cases that I know have been used in competition and other places. but I have not timed them read at the pace of a rookie. Debaters learn to speak real fast, even if public forum doesn't always support it. Like, you just begin to think in fast numbers. So I haven't timed any of these. And my guess is they're kind of long and you will need to cut them down. And you have my permission to just remove evidence or remove words from it. I'm going to talk about it. But Case Pro 1 argues that we should ban single-use plastics because of their impact on the oceans. And if you open up that file, you'll see there's two kinds of highlighting. There's words that are highlighted in blue and words that are highlighted in yellow. And this is important because we want to distinguish what are the words of the author, the expert, the author, the researcher, the journalist, the scientist, whoever wrote this piece of evidence. What are their words total and intact? And we don't change them. This is part of the integrity of debate, that we're going to be honest with our words on it. But those authors do not write for the purpose of academic debate. They write to be read in journals. To go use them in a debate round under time constraints means that we have to shrink it down a little bit, and we don't read every word of it. Without changing the context or information, we will build new evidence out of it. So stuff that's highlighted in blue is the words of the debater. Like, our team wrote that stuff, and you are welcome to change any word in blue. And, use your own voice, encourage your kids to rewrite the tags in their voice or the introductions in their voice, or use it just as I've written, whatever you want. That's a royal eye. I've had some help on this. But the yellow stuff, though, you can't change any of these words. You may select different things to highlight and read out loud, but don't change any of the words, because that's the evidence from the author, right? You are welcome to select different words, and we call it cutting the card. You are welcome to highlight these differently, however you like, but don't change any of the words in it. So if I'm going to read Case Pro 1, Ocean Microplastics, I'm going to start with the introduction. And I am little Joey Wahlberg. I'm my 7th grader. I'm going to go stand up, and I'm going to start this debate. And I've got my Chromebook, and I'm standing at the front of the room. And I'm going to set a timer. And this could be a timer on my phone. This could be a timer on my laptop. For our debaters, literally, they get kitchen timers. And they go beep, 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 beep. Want 4 on there because it's a 4-minute speech. And I hold the timer. And as soon as I start speaking, I hit the start button. And the first word starts the thing. And I'm going to say, sure, plastics are cheap, easy, and reliable way to package our food and everyday items. They're also a cheap, easy, and reliable way to hurt our environment and threaten the life on our planet. Therefore, we are resolved. The United States federal government should ban single-use plastics. We begin our case with contention. Microplastics wreak havoc on the environment. Subpoint A, single-use plastics never go away. Lindwall 20. Single-use plastics don't really break down. They just break up. Wear and tear can slowly turn plastics into smaller and smaller pieces until they eventually become what are known as microplastics. Subpoint B, there are 2 specific threats to plastics in the earth water. First is the problem of plastic ingestion, as microplastics threaten aquatic ecosystems. Ansosin 70. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Go back and look at this. So the blue stuff, write it in your own voice, write the phrasing. If you think we need to change out some articles, whatever. Contention. When you say that, contention, microplastics wreak havoc on the environment, that might be Roman numeral 1, our contention. There are sometimes that debaters will use multiple contentions, and they start saying contention 1, contention 2. And these are things they're seeing in the beginning of their argument. This is what I contend. You'll also see people claiming it out. Subpoint A, subpoint B. Some debaters don't use a structure on that. They just say, single-use plastics never go away. And then later, there are 2 specific threats to Earth's water. First, and they don't. I think the subpoint A and subpoint B just makes it easier for people to follow along, and amateur listening could start to create a little outline on a piece of paper and make some notes as they go. There's not a requirement on it. It's just kind of stylistic what they go. There are two sites for the author. There's the short one, which is the author's last name and the year in which the article was written. So it's Lindwall 20. And then you'll see in smaller font behind it is that this is Courtney Lindwall, and this is from nrdc.org and the title of the thing, and then when it was published and what the website is and when we accessed that information, when it was put together, because things on the internet can change. And you'll also notice in that card that there is stuff that is highlighted, stuff that is underlined, stuff that is not underlined and is in super tiny font. We only read the highlighted stuff. And as much as possible, this is kind of a finesse thing, and actually I think it's really fun when they start stringing together words out of sentences to make a new sentence and it sounds seamless, like single-use plastics don't really break down. All of that stuff is intact, and we've left the card 100% intact, that if a judge wants to look at this evidence, they can pull it up on their laptop, they can have the kid go bring the laptop to them, whatever it would be, and they can read and prove the debater took nothing out of context. This is all exactly how the author intended it. It's just been kind of trimmed down a little bit to be read under time constraints in a spoken word event rather than a read in a journal event on it. This particular case is has a lot of highlighting in larger font that and then underline stuff that isn't highlighted on it. This is a style of cutting a card that says like, well, the judge is probably reading this at his or her desk because they also have their laptop and they're just looking into it. And if they're going to read it, they're going to read the whole thing. And I don't have time to read all of it, but I sure wish they would read this sentence on it. So that style is done there. Different cases have been constructed differently depending on who is the lead constructor on building it, but that's kind of what it is. So those go contention, subpoint A, subpoint B, and there's a first and second under B. And in this case, then it switches to impact. By the way, on the sidebar of this this piece of evidence, if you don't have the sidebar that's showing you the table of contents and you're on Google Docs, then go hit that little hamburger on the left side and it's going to pop over the outline on it. And you can see this works as kind of like a quick link where you can hit subpoint A and it's going to jump you straight to the subpoint B. This case has an impact 1 that talks about the destruction of the ocean ecosystem, that basically plastics work their way into the water, animals think it's food, and that eventually works its way up the food chain until human beings are ingesting plastics. And it's not necessarily like big chunks of like, ooh, this plastic is delicious, but it's like the microplastics or even the nanoplastics, a word I didn't know existed until I started researching this case. And all of those are getting into our bodies. And then it actually has a second impact, where this one says that not only is that bad for the animals, but it's also just bad for the ocean itself, that the chemistry of the plastic is changing the pH levels of the water. It's changing the chemistry of the water to making ocean life unsustainable, and you're actually getting species die off the more pollution of the plastics entering the water onto it. In this case, there's a couple of cards at the bottom called extension evidence. These are things I would not read in my first constructive. These are things that maybe the other pro speaker would like to hang on to and refer to later. Some other authors saying it in a different way. There's not enough to make a whole speech out of there. You might decide that you like that plastics are poisoning the sea life better than one of the other B cards in there, and you're welcome to switch them out. It's fine. These are all, Lego pieces you can clip in new ways. The second case I want to move to is the case pro number 2. And this one is a little bit more aggressive. Is that the word for it? So debaters love to find an edge. And this one's got kind of a sharp edge to it. It's a little more, not abrasive, but edgy rhetoric that can feel like it's a little more cutting. So this one is titled "School Plastics Are Killing Us." And it's very much of like, from a middle schooler's point of view, like, hey, I'm a vulnerable kid and I'm put in a world where I have to deal with all this stuff and I don't have a way out and it's hurting me. Now, from a strategic point of view, this is one that some students really like because they think it gives them a voice. Some people don't like it because they think it puts the judge in an awkward position and makes claims that a middle schooler might not want to defend on it. I don't know. We'll see. You can pick this one. You can not pick this one. You can read it in entirety. You could rewrite this one. But this one argues. Introduction. Schools are supposed to be safe places to learn and grow, but American schools are poisoning us with toxic chemical plastics, and we're trapped in it. Therefore, we are resolved. The United States federal government should ban single-use plastic in our case with contention 1. Now, this one has 2 contentions. It does not have an impact scenario like we saw in the first one. This one has 2 contentions, so contention 1 and contention 2. There's not really a method for constructing a case. It's just kind of like whatever the case constructor wants. But you think of that as Roman numeral number 1 and Roman numeral number 2. Okay. Contention 1. The school lunches are killing us. Subpoint A. The American schools have a plastic waste problem. Stevens at 22. American public schools serve lunch to nearly 30 million students every day and depend on styrofoam trays and single-use plasticware. A single middle school can create more than 30,000 pounds of waste through its lunchroom annually, and the problem balloons to serious proportions. Subpoint B. Those lunchroom plastics are seeping into the food they're feeding us. From Mankian in 23. Styrene is widely used to make plastics, including food containers and lunch bags. The National Toxicology Program listed styrene as a carcinogen known to cause cancer. Styrene is prone to leach into hot foods, potentially causing severe harm to students who ingest anything held in these products. This is a danger exposure to chemical that jeopardizes students' health. Then it goes on to subpoint C. This is causing endocrine disruption, and the kids can't stop it. The kids just like, this is what my school gave me to eat. So the argument here, the logic of this case is that kids go and they get their school lunch. And when the cafeteria staff goes and puts their chicken fried steak on the styrofoam tray, and the chicken fried steak comes right out of the oven. I mean, because we all wish it was a fryer, but it's a school lunch. So it comes straight out of the oven, and they put it on that styrofoam tray. The chemicals in the styrofoam hits that hot food, and it actually begins to leach the chemistry out of the styrene and into the food. And I'm ingesting that food. And even if it's like they give me a plastic fork to eat it with, and I'm taking that single-use plastic and I'm just shoving it into my mouth again and again, and that is leaking its chemicals into me that way. And these are what the schools are doing to me. The schools are giving me this stuff. And I can't stop it. I'm a kid, right? Like, I don't get to say, I'm sorry, I would like to have china cutlery and a metal fork, please. Like, no, you don't. You just get what the school gives you. And those lunches are being served to millions of people every day, and it's billions of lunches are served annually. And this case is arguing we're poisoning our kids. And the kids, these middle schoolers, like, they just have to take it. They don't have a different choice. And then they argue contention 2, you can ban single-use plastics. It's possible, and it works. It argues that we're not going to fix things by recycling. This card, I like it. It doesn't actually follow the rest of the logic of the speech. And if you want to move it to another speech somewhere else, you may. But I do like this idea that it's like, there's no healthy plastic consumption. You can't recycle it. You think you're recycling. None of that stuff gets recycled. So it's practically a myth. And then it says, change doesn't happen on its own. Nobody voluntarily gives up plastic straws because paper straws are awful and we don't like them. But if you're at a place that gives you a paper straw, you don't have a plastic straw. And so plastic bans actually work. But nobody's going to do it on their own. You're going to need to have somebody tell you, no more plastic straws, no more plastic bags, no more plastic forks. We're not doing this anymore. Nobody's going to do that on their own, but a government can do it. A structural change can do it. And then it says in subpoint C, and this works. And they look at the empirical proof of plastic shopping bags. When they say, if you get rid of if you ban plastic shopping bags, people stop using plastic shopping bags. They switch to paper bags. They switch to, reusable cloth bags, all of the tote bags we get as educators, and none of us ever use any. Like, what am I going to do with the 8th tote bag? Put your groceries in it because there's no more plastic bags, right? And they're saying, like, actually those work. And they empirically tell you that a plastic ban, people stop using plastic bags, and it pretty much the problem goes away. Now, I will say that this evidence isn't about health. You're implying it's really about environments. They talk about these plastic bans, plastic bag bans. That like suddenly there's less plastic bag waste. They don't fly out of the trash trucks. They're not blowing and caught in the trees anymore. You solve the plastic physical pollution problem. They don't specifically talk about the health problem. And that might be an interesting topic for a negative to go into. Like, I'm looking at your solvency evidence here, and none of this is about stopping endocrine disruption. If we banned all the plastic, maybe the chemicals have already leached into your body and you're not adding to it, but you're not getting it out either. So the damage is done. I will say there's no evidence. I have scoured the scientific literature on mitigating plastic if there's a health benefit from it, and there's a lot of speculation, but there's nothing actually in an empirical study that says anything other than we're screwed. Like, it's like if you get rid of all the plastic in your life right now, doesn't matter. You've already got the plastic in your system. There's no evidence that says anything other than that, because there's actually just not a lot of evidence on it. I mean, that's the other thing on it, which makes this interesting to debate. That is not listed in the case. that's a topic that may be a good logical argument to go get on the side. Those are the 2 pro cases that we've pre-written. You're welcome to use these. You're welcome to use these in their entirety. You're welcome to rearrange the evidence. You're welcome to switch out evidence for other things. You are welcome to entirely write a new pro case. I've just given you a couple, and use these as models. Use one piece of evidence out of it and build a new case somewhere else. Green light. You are welcome to do so. There are also 2 con cases in here. The case con number 1 is an economic danger. Now, this one has an introduction which does not match the logic of the rest of the case. This one, the introduction begins a solvency argument saying, if you ban single-use plastics, it's never going to work. It's never going to work because single-use plastic is defined by the use, not the intent. Like it's the intent of the user, not the intent of the manufacturer. So the manufacturer could just say like, oh, it's not single-use plastic. You're supposed to use that fork twice. Use it. It's dual use. Therefore, we don't have to ban it. I mean, you can continue to use a fork for a long time. Plastic fork. You continue, like, even if it breaks, you got 3 tines. It's a freak, not a fork. It's not a word. But because it's defined by the intent. That's the logic of the introduction. The rest of the logic of the case does not follow the introduction. With that, if you use this one, I would suggest rewriting the introduction. If you like the logic of that, maybe you could write a whole con case out of it. The introduction does not match the rest of the case. The logic of the rest of con case number 1, economics or economy danger, is that plastics are super important to the economy. Nothing does what plastics do. Nothing does it in its efficiency. Nothing does it in its economic class. Nothing does it in its weight. Like if you're suddenly switching all of your packages from, bubble wrap plastic to jars, just think of the weight difference in switching into there. That's super expensive. That's going to impact shipping. That's going to impact availability. The reality is, okay, well, it says contention. Banning plastics will devastate the economy. Subpoint A. The reality is that plastic is an integral part of the economy. Kramer in 19. The plastics industry is one of the largest manufacturing industries in the U.S. It generates $4 to $51 billion a year in shipments. It employs 993,000 people directly and more than 1.5 billion indirectly. Plastics matter a lot. You can't, getting rid of them would be a huge shock to the economy. Subpoint B, banning plastics result in messed up supply chains, causing inflation. Talking about all the things that plastic do for shipping and for packaging and for just selling it in stores and getting it on trucks. And you're going to disrupt the entire shipping industry, which will cause everything to be more expensive. Think of things that are plastic, right? Have you ever been to a doctor's office? All of that stuff is single use. You go and get your shots, the syringe is plastic, and they don't wash out the syringes and reuse them. That's a single-use plastic syringe. And it's been packaged in a sterile package. There's paper on one side and plastic on the other. The packaging is a single-use plastic. And if they're going to put a Band-Aid on you, and that's a plastic Band-Aid, guess what? Single-use plastic. And all of this stuff becomes you're going to make healthcare really expensive. When the doctor puts on rubber gloves, that's single-use plastic, and you're going to ban that? Suddenly now we've got a real problem that's driving up the cost of healthcare. We've driven up the cost of food. People need those things. You've just driven up the cost of being alive, and that's tough. That's real inflation. You're going to screw the American economy. Subpoint C, these higher interest rates pass on and hurt American consumers. If you buy food or use medicine, it's going up. It could be more expensive to be alive. And then you get into the impact structure in this case, that it's this is going to bring economic chaos. You're going to cause an economic recession. And hey, plot twist, if the economy, bad economies have bad environments. If you're trying to keep the ocean free from plastics, but you tank the economy, do you know who the cleanest economies are? They're rich countries. It's poor countries that have bad environments. They're the ones with huge pollution problems. If you go and hurt the American economy, you're actually hurting the environment. This is a pretty direct relationship to increasing air pollution and water pollution. And you're just trading off one mess for another and wrecking the economy in the meantime. And that is actually a bad environment actually hurts the poor and the vulnerable the most. The people on the margins suffer way harder than people of means when it comes to that. So that's That's the logic of con case number 1 of economics. With this one, it also has a piece of backup evidence for it. If your team wants to run this one, you're going to need to add to it. Then there's con case 2. And this is kind of an interesting one. This one argues that plastics are really needed in the rest of the world because America takes care of the rest of the world. So it argues, this one, single-use plastics, there's the contention it's making. Single-use plastics make food and medicine safe, affordable, and basically nothing else does the job as well. So we've hit some of this logic already, right? Like this is what food's packaged in. This is what medicine's packaged in. But then it goes to say that these are the life-saving tools for emergency aid to the rest of the world. And the United States is the emergency aid vehicle for the rest of the world. Nobody produces as much disaster aid, emergency aid as the U.S. does. When there's a hurricane which hits a Caribbean country, it's the U.S. that goes down and sends medical care, sends medicine and foods. And suddenly, if we're not going to put anything in a plastic bag to get down to them, you're making it kind of impossible for us to even go help other people. Or they're going to do it at tremendous cost. Our scale's going to change, and you're actually going to cause people to starve or have medical emergencies, and they have become dependent on American foreign aid, and you have cut it all off. You have cut it. You think you're trying to save the world by banning plastics. What you're actually doing is getting innocent people killed. Okay. This also has some extension and backup evidence on it. You'll probably want to add to this one. This one is the shortest of the cases. All of this is pretty severe. All of this is pretty severe. And it's actually also pretty logical. And a judge is going to sit down and try to find who's going to win and lose this round. And they're going to think, okay, well, our oceans are screwed, but if I try to fix that, I'm going to destroy the economy. Or, I'm worried about the health of children, but to do so means I also have to be worried about the health of people who just aren't in front of me, the rest of the world who's going to depend on it as well. So these are real things. This is the real world, and this is what policymakers need to decide upon. To win a round, your debaters are going to need to go differentiate themselves, because the judge is ultimately not going to ask, would I rather kill fish or third world people? Like that's not what they're going to ask. The judge is going to ask himself, which side defended their position the best? Which side was the best at debating in this round? The topic becomes the vehicle, right? Like we're having a debate and two sides are facing up at each other. But all of these are real world topics. And there's science and there's social studies and there's ELA, and all of it gets wrapped into this, and it's so multidisciplinary. I love it. Okay, I want to jump over, we're going to go back to the Google Drive, and you'll see that those are those cases that are there. Case Con 1, Con 2, Case Pro 1, and Case Pro 2. And you're welcome to use any of those just as they are, or like I said, you can write your own. There's also a couple of files that are listed as prep. There are companies which write prep books that go and allow you to, like, they go and find evidence for you. They construct cases for you. In the competitive debate world, I subscribe to a couple of these, and I get them, and they help us build our arguments. If I look at these, I've got a few choices on them. I open, say, Prep West Coast file number 2. This is one that was called West Coast Debate, and we purchased this and got special permission that we can be able to share it. That's what we got here. And if I have my sidebar on, so I've hit that little hamburger button and it's opened up that outline on the side, you can see there is a lot going on in this file. And if I start at the top, it's got West Coast Debate, Table of Contents, Resolve, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go down to Pro. And they've given me a few examples of things that an affirmative team would contend. An affirmative could make a claim on banning plastics is good for the economy, that bans are effective, that bans need federal enforcement to work, that bans are good for public health. There's some interesting stuff in this one. I love the way that it takes about oil and gas drilling. They say public health, yeah, plastics are a petroleum product. And so to make them, we have to do petroleum mining and drilling and all of the environmental business that comes from that before you've even made the Ziploc bag. You've really damaged the environment from there. And we have to go breathe this air. We have to go live in the water that's... Anyway, they also talk about the environment. And then it goes to the rebuttal section. And here you see AT. These are answers to. So when a negative team says bans are ineffective, here's some answers to the bans are ineffective. The other packets, you'll see a very similar structure. Their ATs are the letter A and the number 2. It's answers to, same thing. Basically, like if I'm an AF, if I'm a pro side, and the neg says something, here's a piece of evidence, I can answer it. Cons have all the things. There's several contentions here. And look, they almost line up. The economy, here's ways that a plastic ban could hurt the economy. Here's show that bans are ineffective. The third one, it says SQUO solves. SQUO is debater abbreviation. Sorry for the microphone. Is debater abbreviation for status quo. It's basically like, currently, what are we doing? We're actually going and developing remediation for plastic in the oceans right now. And this is a really fun position to take. And this is kind of a nuanced position. And nuance is not something that people learning debate often go to, because it's easier to kind of work with the big cleavers on this rather than the razors. But this one, the SQUO solves argues, and here a negative team could say, we agree with the affirmative that plastic pollution in waters is really bad, and it is bad in the oceans, and we don't want it there either. We agree, we agree on your contentions. We agree on your harms. That is correct, but you don't need to ban plastics to get there. We could just get the plastic out of the oceans. What if we did that instead? What if you take the idea that we can use, what do they say here? The technology is developed that 50% of the oceans will be removed within 5 years. It's the Ocean Cleanup Project. You don't have to ban plastics. Just clean up the mess. That's a really nuanced position. That's a fun position for a negative or a con team to take. And they've got environmental cases. They've got some answers too down there as well. So these are in West Coast. There's 2 files of West Coast. There's others in there. You're welcome to use any of it. You'll notice that none of this stuff is highlighted. This company uses underlining. Other companies will use bolding. The ones we provided don't do highlighting. You are welcome to highlight it. You are welcome to not highlight it. Kind of whatever the plan is on that one. So did it just throw me a? Oh, that's crazy. Why is it doing that? That's I got some AIs and freaking everything. Okay. So you're welcome to use any of that stuff. You are welcome to cobble together new pro and con cases from there, or to go find original research. If I'm looking down through the rest of that Google Drive, I see there's something called a public forum flow sheet. And you can print this out and print it out on the biggest paper that you've got. Legal size is pretty common in the debate world. If you've got 11 by 17, go for it. Some people think that's kind of a clumsy size, but that's what you got. We use legal size for it, for instance. And it's a way of tracking the arguments. Well, the pro side said this, and I'm con this round. What would I say here? And so you're trying to record what they said, what my answers would be, and try to follow an argument there. That's called a flow sheet. I expect it from my debaters that they're flowing rounds for it. There's something called the SJA debate speech times, and I would print this out and put it in the hands of every kid that's competing in there. The constructives are each 4 minutes. The crossfires are 2 minutes. And then you get into the summaries and the final focuses. Those are 2 minutes, and the grand crossfire is 3 minutes. Also, each team gets 5 minutes of prep time, which they can kind of use in increments. They say, okay, before the second pro constructive, I need some minutes to go. I need some time to compile some notes. And so I'm going to take 2 minutes of prep time. And you go and when the 5 minutes is up, you're up, and get up there and go give your speech on it. But you get some 5 minutes of prep time to kind of go build your speeches on it. But I would go print this out and give it to every kid that's going into the rounds on it. And then in this Google Drive, there are 4 files at the bottom called teaching. There's some handouts there, a couple of PowerPoint slides, and some PDFs for it. These are, you could share it with your kids if you want to. Just kind of some things for teachers. Of note on this one, at our tournament, we're going to use some specific speech times. Different parts of the country do public forum in different speech times. There's a fair amount of variation in this event, so please pay attention to the St. James speech times. And also, we're not coin flipping for what side is going first or what team is going to be which position. We are assigning that, and the pros going first on it. So those may be different than what you find in the teaching materials here or elsewhere. That is to simplify the game for people that are learning public forum debate. And that's basically what I've got. The next time that we meet, we will meet with students. And we're going to meet at St. James Academy for a couple of sessions there. We've got some snacks that we'll put out and get a chance to kind of work through some mock stuff on it. I love this game. I'm so glad to join you on the adventure. If you've got any questions for me, absolutely reach out. Here in the second and third week of the school year, I'm starting to get my head above me, above water on the email cavalcade. Oh my goodness, email's in August, isn't it? Anyway, feel free to reach out and I'll do my best on it. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you again.